Hare Krishna. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today's verse is Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 43rd verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I will share my screen. So the title of the chapter is Glories of Devotional Service, and this is spoken by Srila Kapila Dev to his mother Devahuti. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yogena Yoginaha Kshemaya Padamulam Me Pravishantyakuto Bhayam. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yogena Yoginaha Kshemaya Padamulam Me Pravishantyakuto Bhayam. One more time. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yogena Yoginaha Kshemaya Padamulam Me Pravishantyakuto Bhayam. Jnana, with knowledge, Vairagya and renunciation, Yuktena, equipped, Bhakti Yogena, by devotion service, Yoginaha, the yogis, Kshemaya, for eternal benefit, Padamulam, feet, may, my, Pravishanti, take shelter of, Akuta Bhayam, without fear. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. Purport. One who actually wants to be liberated from the entanglement of this material world and go back home, back to Godhead, is actually a mystic yogi. The words explicitly used here are yuktena bhakti yogena. Those yogis or mystics who engage in devotional service are first-class yogis. The first-class yogis, as described in Bhagavad Gita, are those who are constantly thinking of the Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. These yogis are not without knowledge and renunciation. To become a bhakti yogi means to automatically attain knowledge and renunciation. That is the consequent result of bhakti yoga. In the Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, it is also confirmed that one who engages in devotional service of Vasudev, Krishna, has complete transcendental knowledge and renunciation. And there is no explanation for these attainments. Ahaituki. Without reason they come. Even if a person is completely illiterate, the transcendental knowledge of the scriptures is revealed unto him simply because of his engagement in devotional service. That is also stated in the Vedic literature. To anyone who has full faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the spiritual master, all the import of the Vedic literatures is revealed. He does not have to seek separately. The yogi who engages in devotional service is full in knowledge and renunciation. If there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. The conclusion is that one cannot be sure of entrance into the spiritual realm in either the impersonal Brahma Jyoti effulgence of the Lord or the Vaikuntha planets within that Brahman effulgence unless he is surrendered unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. The surrendered souls are called Akuto Bhaya. They are doubtless and fearless, and their entrance into the spiritual kingdom is guaranteed. So, translation. The yogis, equipped with transcendental knowledge and renunciation and engaged in devotional service for their eternal benefit, take shelter of my lotus feet. And since I am the Lord, they are thus eligible to enter into the kingdom of Godhead without fear. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Paramanandam Madhavam. Hare Krishna. So again, this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 25, Text 43. And this is a conversation between Mother Devahuti and her son, divine son, Kapiladev, who is none other than the Supreme Lord. So this chapter is titled The Glories of Devotional Service. So there is nothing but pure devotional service in this whole chapter. And when I was reading this purport, the first thing that struck me was Srila Prabhupada's purport are just Shastra, just simple, like a baby food. It is he's taken knowledge from every part of the Vedas and he's put that in the purport. And it's like literally different verses put together, but in a logical, in a sequential, and in a simple way for us to understand. The chapter is so high and so sublime that I feel quite challenged to speak about it. But there is one line that I could very well relate to in the purport, and that came towards the end. And it said, if there is a lack of knowledge and renunciation, it is to be understood that one is not in full devotional service. So that is my situation here. And that's the kind of the platform that I'll be speaking from. So different things come to mind. One is that, so here we are talking about a yogi. And so what does this yogi have? So in the translation it says, he's equipped with knowledge and renunciation. And when he engages in devotional service, what happens is he can enter the kingdom of Godhead where there is no fear, right? So yesterday, Saragrahi Mataji talked about fear. And, we understand fear is something that comes when the living entity identifies oneself as this body. Then we see this duality. So in fact, so the verse that Prabhupada, is alluding to is this 11:237, Bhayam dvitiyan abhiniveshatas syad. Ishad apetasya viparyayo smritihi. So in that purport, basically, Prabhupada quotes Sridhar Swami, and Sridhar Swami is, if somebody may ask, well, if fear is due to ignorance, we'll just equip ourselves with knowledge and we'll no longer be fearful. To counter that, Sridhar Swami says, well, that may seem a reasonable argument, but it is not, because Daivihi esha gunamayi mama maya duratyaya. So you can't get over this maya, this external energy so easily because it is under my control. So in that purport, Srila Prabhupada says, so the potency of the Lord that enlightens us in the Lord's service is Chit Shakti. So, what happens when a living entity turns away from the Supreme Lord? This Chit Shakti, so from Krishna's vantage, all of those are his Shaktis. The Bahiranga, Antaranga, Tathastha, all of those are his Shaktis. Chit Shakti is his internal. And so when the living entity turns away from the Supreme Lord, the Bahiranga Shakti takes over. And it covers all traces of Chit Shakti and it imposes the material body. We basically have to take this, after one, because of this gross sinful tendency to enjoy separately, the Bahiranga Shakti comes and it covers the living entity. And so what is the result of that? Bhayam. And why is there bhayam? Because we see this duality in the world, and so Mataji spoke about that yesterday, so I'm not going to speak about that further. But it is mentioned in the purport, in the translation and purport, so I thought I'll talk a little bit about it. And then, but today what I wanted to talk about was, and it's a question that I have always had, and that is, we talk about jnana, vairagya, and bhakti, these three entities, how do they come together? We speak about them as if they are separate, but we also speak about them as if they are one and the same. Not one and the same, but you can put them in the same category of things. So are they the same? Are they different? So first, of course, Srila Prabhupada speaks about Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahaitukam. He quotes that in the purport as well. Hetu means cause, ahetu causelessly. Causelessly what comes? Jnana and Vairagya comes. Right? So there is no need to separately cultivate those two things because Krishna gives it to us. So like he says in Bhagavad Gita 10:10 and 10:11, Tesham satata yuktanam. So he says, Dadami buddhi yogam tam. He gives us the knowledge. Tesham evanu kampartam. Then he says, Jnana deepena bhashvata. So he gives us the intelligence. He gives us the knowledge. Similar sentiment is given in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2, the series of verses where this Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. So all of that, when you keep reading, Bhidyate Hridaya Granthis, so that the knot is pierced, the illusion is taken off. So you hear even there, the same sentiment is spoken of. So I wanted to read a little bit from purport to that. And there, the whole spiritual process leads to perfect knowledge of everything material and spiritual. And the result is that one becomes detached from material affection and becomes attached to spiritual activities. So Prabhupada quotes very beautifully here. He says, Naishkarma means not undertaking activities that will produce good or bad effects. Negation does not mean negation of positive. Negation of non-essentials does not mean negation of essential. Similarly, detachment from material forms does not mean nullifying the positive form. Because people may think detachment just means, nullifying the material things. But he's saying it is not true. It is attachment to the positive things, attachment to the spirit, attachment to Krishna's lotus feet. That is the shift in our consciousness. So that comes up. So, there is this pastime of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati where a visitor comes. He says, I have a lot of questions for you. Bhakti Siddhanta says, I'm currently busy. My disciples are doing some seva. How about you go help them? And the disciples were cleaning deity paraphernalia. So this visitor goes, he does some seva, and when he comes back, his questions are all answered, right? Sevan mukhe, so Bhakti Siddhanta quotes, Sevan mukhe hi jihvada swayameva hi spuratyada. So by service, one is able to understand. Without service, one is not able to understand. That is that which is beyond our intellect, right? So it has to be this descending knowledge. And so that is what this particular purport talks about. But then the question may arise, should we actively, proactively engage in detachment and knowledge, the process of knowledge? Is it helpful or is it unhelpful? So we have heard this story of, the we have 10 more minutes, so I'm going to keep the story short. So there are these people who are, the marriage party who are seated on a boat and they have to get to the other island for the wedding the next day. They are rowing the whole night. And in the morning, when they get up, they are in the same place. And that's because the anchor is dropped. And so the boat has been just making circles. So our situation is that we keep going around in this material world, in the cycle of birth and death, we keep going around and around because our anchor is put down. We are so invested in uh, enjoying this world, in the different activities that we are doing, that we are constantly circling back again and again. And so that is our downfall. Just like uh, the deer, Prabhupada gives, I was reading a conversation. I'm forgetting the context of the conversation, but in that Prabhupada course, he's talking about, oh yeah, there is an ice cream truck that is coming, and so they are having the disciples and Srila Prabhupada are laughing about it, and Prabhupada is saying that is Maya. And so in that conversation, he says, just like the hunter may play a flute, the deer hears that, and that is his downfall. A fisherman may throw, his bait and the fish catches it. It's because of the sense of taste that the fish gets caught. Or, the time the hunter unleashes a female elephant and the female elephant touches the body of a male elephant and the male elephant goes mad, goes chasing after her, falls into a ditch. And that's the end of the elephant. So that's his sense of touch. Or the firefly, because of the sense of light, it's drawn to that. So Prabhupada says, in an animal world, one single sense can be its downfall. But for a human being, we have all these senses, intellect, a mind that is impure. All of those things are pulling us away. And so that is our story, right? Like we are attached to sense gratification. We are not detached from it. So should we, after all, not cultivate detachment? Absolutely, yes. And in fact, Pingala, um, in that the introduction to the chapter, Srila Prabhupada writes, she's disgusted. She finally became renounced and gave up hankering for the arrival of a suitor. She engages herself in thinking of the Supreme Lord Hari, and her mind achieves supreme platform of peace at once. So the instruction received from her is that hopes for sense gratification are the root cause of all suffering. So therefore, one has to give up such anchoring. So I'm just listing out points why we should develop detachment, right? We heard about the example of rowing. We heard about how the senses drag us down. We hear about story of Pingala. And the final point that I want to make is that, in 555, Parabhavastavad Abodha Jato. So in that, basically, it says that as long as one does not inquire about the spiritual values of life, one is defeated, subject to miseries arising from ignorance. Be it sinful or pious, karma has its resultant actions. So if a person is engaged in any kind of karma, his mind is karmatmaka, colored with fruitive activity. And as long as the mind is impure, consciousness is unclear. And as long as one is absorbed in fruitive activities, he has to accept a material body. So we can see that it is essential for us to develop knowledge. It is essential for us to um, you know, express a certain amount of detachment from senses, sense gratification, all of that. It is essential. Otherwise, it becomes a hindrance, right? So it is helpful. Then, but one may also say, so the third point is that can detachment be dangerous? Because we also hear that, our hearts may become hard. And it can be dangerous to bhakti. So, uh, how is it that our hearts can become hard? So to quote that, if we become so detached from the material world that we become disgusted with it. Then our hearts become hard. So, in this purport to 1128, Srila Prabhupada writes, those who become disgusted with material life take to impersonal philosophical speculation and rigorously try to stamp out any trace of personal existence. A first-class candidate for pure devotion service is neither completely disgusted nor attached to material life. So, further on, Prabhupada writes, a person who avoids the two extremes of material attachment and impersonal reaction to material attachment, who somehow or other gets association of pure devotees, hearing their message, is a good candidate for going back home, back to Godhead. So, the second point, second thing that Shastra, whereas Shastra says a similar point is, this is Lord Chaitanya, speaking, and, I think he's speaking to Sanatan Goswami, but Tapan Mishra is also there. And he says, if one becomes a bookworm, reading many books and scriptures, hearing many commentaries and instructions of many men, this will produce doubt in one's heart. One cannot in this way ascertain the real goal of life. So we have seen three different things, right? Like one, which is said in this particular purport, that jnana and vairagya are the result of bhakti. Krishna himself gives us the knowledge of torchlight of knowledge, and he removes the ignorance. The hard heart and the knot in the heart is pierced. So that is spoken. But we also hear that we need to cultivate knowledge and vairagya because it helps in the path of bhakti. Without it, it becomes a hindrance. We may have had certain, in India, South India especially, drinking coffee is so prominent. It may be our families, we may have drunk that from our childhood. But yet, when we come to Krishna consciousness, we give up those things. Without that, it becomes a hindrance on the path of bhakti. We may be attached to a certain kind of a music, a certain kind of activities. But when those things are not, they're not anukul to bhakti, we give those things up. So similarly, development of proactively developing detachment and knowledge is essential for bhakti. But too much of it, on the other hand, where one is so detached, when one is so disgusted, it also is a problem because it makes one's heart hard and one cannot. Krishna is all about personal relationships, right? So how do we bring it all together? So while I was thinking, all of those three things are true. And one way to resolve that is, last week, I think maybe it was last week, Sanatan Prem Prabhu's class, he was asking us to quote verses for bhakti and all of that. So different devotees quoted. So one of the verse that was quoted was Narada, speaking, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam krishikena krishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So this is a definition of bhakti, right? It means engaging all our senses in service to the master of the sense. There is another definition of bhakti, which is anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhi anavritam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhakti rutama. So again, a similar situation. One may ask, which is the definition of bhakti? Narada says engaging one's senses in service of the Lord. And, we hear in Nectar of Devotion, Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktir Uttama. That is pure devotional service. So we see a certain hierarchy. When we read Shastra, this is a hierarchy. Okay, so this point I must attribute it to S.B. Keshava Swami. So Maharaj says, there is hierarchy of principles, and at different times, different principles, they may be lower, they may be higher. A certain principle is established. But we should know what is the highest so that we can aspire to move up the ladder. Like for example, Krishna says different kinds of yogis are there. Madgaten antaratmana. He is yoginam api sarvesham. So he's the topmost of the yogis. So it's like a yoga ladder, right? So there is this principle, there is that principle, and there is the highest principle. So in bhakti, at our level, at my level, I engage my senses in service to the Lord, who is Hrishikesha. But the highest level, the pure devotion service, is whatever pleases the Supreme Lord, we do that for Him, and whatever displeases us, we do not do that. And so on and so forth. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhakti Ruttama. So that is Uttama Bhakti. So a similar principle can be applied to this verse, where we develop detachment and knowledge for supporting our bhakti. And then there is this higher principle where when that bhakti, but we should also understand that that bhakti, this process of bhakti in turn is what is giving us the knowledge and renunciation, without which it is not possible. So I hope I have resolved the issue that I started off with. So if others have any understanding or can clarify what I have started to present over here, please do so. Please correct me if I have made any mistakes.
Hare Krishna, Varsana Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Mataji. When you were saying about, I'm nowhere to point any mistakes, and it was very awesome. I should say that. When you said about the fish holding the by just that temptation, right? That moment. So I was yesterday. I was hearing a class by SB Keshav Maharaj on the topic of power of pain. That was such a wonderful class where there were like, it's from one of Srimad Bhagavatam verses he was reading, but still my attention caught into the analogy when he was saying there was a research conducted at Stanford University, and what this research was like, they conducted with one set of kids this side and this another set of kids the other side. So they were asked to eat some marshmallows given to them, and what they said was, if you eat them right away, that's okay, but if you wait for another 30 minutes, you will be given another set of marshmallows. And the choice is yours. You can decide amongst yourself. Few kids, they immediately ate, and few kids, they waited and they got another set of marshmallows. So, and the research was, later they found like the kids who waited later in their life got good jobs, earned more, achieved more in life, and did more contribution and impact to the world. And who were like, could not resist themselves, ate the marshmallows right at that moment. Not that much, achieved like the kids who waited, resisted. So, and the final quote, what Maharaj said was like, if you learn the art, don't do what feeds, or like you feel good right now. Do what is deep within your heart. That was like a very um, carry forward message for me. When you said like, that moment we, take that, it was like somehow, I don't know, when you said it, I don't know if it's very much related to the class, but when you said that, fish and some examples, I was like, immediately my thoughts went on that, Mataji. I mean, I felt like sharing. Anyways, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is true, right? Like we have to resist that temptation. And even in our bhakti practice, so many temptations may come, subtle and gross, and that's almost like the first step that we have to take, stepping stone to the next higher step. Thank you, Mataji. Okay, we are at 8:02. We received a couple of messages here, but if there's nothing else, we will pause for today. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय, श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।